All right, welcome back to the More Than Outdoors podcast, Rumford edition. I'm Austin,
I'm Sam Andrews.
and this is the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and passions that drive Maine's outdoor recreation economy. Sam, where are we today?
We are in the Rumford Community Forest, and it's really amazing here. There's like a hammock, we have Adirondack chairs, there's a picnic table, and we can hear the sounds of like a babbling brook in the distance, which is very sweet. And I was just admiring all the trail work that's been done here for ADA trails and beyond. There's a couple other trail networks that kind of branch off the parking lot, and a snowmobile trail. So it's new. It's started in 2024.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so this is fresh in the block.
That's cool.
In Rumford and not far from downtown. So it was kind of cool to drive out here and see that this is built for the community in Rumford. And this is our first episode in a long time where it's just been us.
I know. I know. It's like we have to remember how to like just talk to each other and not have that third voice always trying to like fit everybody in.
I know, it feels really nice to be able to like come back to the basics and be back to the More Than Outdoors podcast with Austin and Sam.
Yeah, exactly. So cool. So I think today's topic, folks, like we wanted to kind of dive into, the outdoor industry has so many different ways to like constantly develop yourself and build out your skills and knowledge and all those things. And a lot of the times these are housed within different certifications and credentials. And I feel like every avenue that you kind of travel down across the outdoor industry has its own little niche thing that you're like always trying to get to. So we're going to hit on a bunch of those throughout this episode, but also like why they matter and why as someone is, looking at the outdoors as a career opportunity, like thinking about these as really being foundational stepping stones for them to continually work through their career journey.
Totally.
So yeah.
I want to preface that I think that this is information that is hard. Like, not a lot of people know that there are certifications that are around the outdoor industry. And it was something that when I first came in to the industry, I was like, wow, there's so many different avenues and different ways for me to continue my education and grow my skill set. And I really enjoyed the certification process in all the different areas because it really taught me what I already knew, but then it taught me all of the things I had no idea about. And so it gives you like it is a what's the saying, like a fire hose, like you have an 8-hour certification or whatever it is, 5 days where you're learning, like for a wilderness first responder, for instance. And by the end of it, you're not going to know all of the things you need to know and be really solid, but you will know all the things that you need to continue practicing and continuing to grow your skill set. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I feel like it's an exciting place for somebody to kind of, it can look a little daunting, like they're coming up to maybe an outdoor industry career and they're like, okay, I need to have all these certifications. This is expensive. It takes time. But I always looked at it from the other side of like, how cool is this that there's this way that we can continue to grow in professional development and grow our skill set through the certification process with other outdoor industry professionals or just people who like spending time outside. So there's definitely a lot of different routes, and I think it would be great for us to go through them just to kind of explain all the things that we know and what we've seen in the industry. But for the outdoor recreator or like the weekend warrior, I think a lot of these certifications apply to them too, because it just continues to build on what they're passionate about, and then they're safer doing the things that they love to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's cool, right? Because it's the acknowledgement that what we oftentimes do in the outdoors can be really complicated. Like, especially when you start talking about the, like, you're bringing people into the outdoors, like there's so many different variables that you're thinking about. And You're not only trying to like make sure that people are safe, but they also have a great experience with you, and they're also being like good stewards of whatever piece of land that you're kind of engaging with, or the natural resources, right? So there's all of these different puzzle pieces that you're trying to build out, and that's why like all of a sudden it does feel like the fire hose is just on and it never seems to turn off, right? But I tell you what, as I've kind of kept going through a bunch of my like re-ups for different certifications that I have, I've been really impressed with how a lot of the certification like organizations have started to try to front load a little bit more of the like, hey, here are the resources that like you should really be reviewing before going into these environments. So that way, hopefully when you're hearing whoever the facilitator is talk about X topic, it's not the first time that you've heard it. And if anything, it's like just kind of re-jogging the memory of like, oh yeah, like I remember, whether it was I read about it or in this one video series that I was walking through, like just being able to have some of that kind of already in there. That way then you can go through whatever the certification process looks like, and you're just doing, right? Like you're experiencing, and then eventually like displaying your ability to perform whatever the specific skill sets are based off of the certification, and I think it's interesting because like you brought up the whole concept of like, even if you are not the person who is like this is your full-time career, like what are some of those things that um, those certifications they could still really go after, and my brain immediately goes to like the wilderness first aid space,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's something where like regardless of whether you work in the industry, these are just really valuable tools to have in your toolbox, because
Mm-hmm.
you never know when you're out recreating like what's going to happen. And it's not even always necessarily you or a person that's like in your party of people that you're out recreating with. It could be some random bystander that all of a sudden you come upon like on a hiking trail,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the ones that are hurt, and now all of a sudden like you have this little piece of knowledge that like, we're not saying you're a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have just some of these tools to hopefully get that person to the next layer of care, you know. And I think that's just I've always thought of those things as like the little pieces that make a really big difference for all of us to just look at, like us being stewards of the outdoors and making sure that like when people are out there, we're always looking out for each other, because you just never know when things like take a turn, you
Yeah,
know.
definitely. There's so many pieces from what you were just saying that I was like, oh, I want to make sure we talk about this, because I think that the going back to the certification process, why it matters, I think there's so much value to this style of education where it's speaking to all different types of learners. And it's why I was so attracted to it, especially when in my lifetime, just choosing to kind of pause college and knowing that like I could always go back to that, but I really wanted to dive into outdoor education, and the certification process was a way for me to learn and gain skills, but it was like meeting the needs of my learning style at that time in my life. So really, like I think just going back to what you were saying about just like the process leading up to the certification, it's just speaking to so many different learning styles, and so great for just such a wide range of people. And then like the certifications itself, I feel like we could kind of go through the different tiers, and I think the wilderness first aid is a great starting point, and there's so many different avenues you can go with wilderness medicine that I think if we could have a whole podcast episode about it. I've gone through all of the steps, because and every time I learn something new, and I've been through a lot of these. That I was just taking a wilderness first responder recertification 2 weekends ago, and this was my third recertification. I had already done a wilderness first aid class. I had done a wilderness first responder class. I've gone through these recertifications. I've been through the EMT training that was like a 5-month course.
Now did you do the like EMTB or like the
Yes.
WEMT?
So I had my wilderness first responder, so that's like the W to the EMT
Gotcha.
basic,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is the B.
yeah.
But all that to say that like there are lots of different avenues you can go down with wilderness medicine, but I found myself realizing every single time I'm still learning, and that if you are not practicing these skills constantly, they fly away. And that's the case for a lot of these certifications. So it's not a one and done, you get certified and now you're a pro. It's like, no, you get certified and now you're going to practice. And whether that looks like you're practicing within your job or you're practicing because you know it's an important skill that meets whatever hobby you have, activity you have, or the job that you have. So there's a lot that's in wilderness medicine, but I think for anybody listening to this podcast, if you're recreating the outdoors, Wilderness First Aid is a 2-day training, and it really will help you in all different ways when it doesn't even matter if you're recreating the outdoors. It can help you in the front country too. And it also will help you think about the things before you go on your trip. How do I plan and prepare for this trip to be safe? And that's beyond guiding and bringing people into the wilderness. So I think that's like the baseline of certification that I would recommend. And then you kind of get into why Maine's so special. And Maine's so special because of this guide licensing process. And we really stand out as one of, I think it's like, I was doing some research before this episode because I was like, how many other states have this requirement? And it was like 6 or 7, and all of them were more towards like big game hunting and fishing.
Sure.
And so like I have some fun stories to share about like the whole Maine guide process, and being a Maine guide myself, like I've seen both sides of it, of like it being really challenging. And I think for some people, like there's some controversy with like the indigenous peoples of Maine have been doing this for so long before the certification process even was founded. And was it, the 1880s?
Something like that, yeah.
I wrote it down because I think that's an important thing to
yeah, I think it was something like that.
Yeah,
1890s.
1890s.
Yep.
And so there's some controversy of like, some people really don't like it, and they think that it's kind of it's not gatekeeping, but it's a barrier to entry. But from the other side of it, I see it as it's built into the roots and the heritage of Maine in so many ways, and it's a privilege. And so a lot of people have this found respect for it and go through the process of learning all of the different things that are required through the testing process and gaining skills before they actually go through that. So by the time they have the certification, they have the skills necessary to actually guide people in that wilderness setting. So we could dive more into like the details of it. But.
Well, yeah, and I want to be the one that's like really curious about this topic in particular, right? Because like you have your guide's license, I do not, right? So like you've walked through that process, and I think the question I want to ask, both for myself but like also for our viewers, is like, walk us through what that actually means to like go through that entire certification process. Because it's one thing to just be like, compare it to a WUFA or a woofer where you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to like go to this 2 or 5 day thing and we're going to go through all kinds of different practical scenarios. And like, yeah, there's some similarities in there, but my understanding from someone who has not gone through the process, right, is like it's intensive. Like there's a lot that you're expected to know, because again, there's so many variables that you have to deal with. And then it's like, then you start going into all the little specialized tracks as well. So like, I know for you, like you have the standard rec guide process, but then you're also the sea kayaking guide. So just, let's pull back the curtain a little bit on that and just kind of, let's walk through that.
Let's walk through it. It is now raining.
Yeah, that's a slight drizzle.
But
we're under
knows?
a tree.
We might be okay.
Yeah, we're under a tree.
Yeah, so they're all different classifications. So we have the sea kayak guide, we have the recreational guide, and those are the 2 certifications that I have. And then there's hunting and fishing and whitewater. I just like to say that like anybody can go through this process. Like you can go on the website. There's tons of details of how you can step by step become a Maine guide. And so I'd encourage anybody who's interested in this process to definitely go and just do some research around it. and think about like how you'd want to use the certification, and where you'd want to use it, and kind of like assess your personal skill set ahead of time
Yeah.
before going into it, because there is such a wide range of things you need to know. But if you can go into that test knowing a lot of them already, because it's the thing that you love to do, and you like, for me, I was already sea kayaking. So going into that, I had a baseline. And then I had to learn a lot more around sea kayaking, because there's so many things that are beyond just doing it for fun. Now there are so many things that you're responsible for other people. So you need to know X, Y, and Z. So the process looks like this. You pay to get your fingerprints done. You get a background check. So that's like $55. You go into, there are a bunch of different locations all around the state. You apply for the testing, and you have a written exam and then a verbal. So the verbal is generally with two main game wardens or somebody who is certified to be in that position to test. And so the written test is about all different kinds of things, and it can be about the topics that you go over in the verbal as well. But the verbal is more like hands-on. You're using your GPS and you're marking your coordinates, and you're walking around and you're telling them all the different pelts and what the different animals are, and you're showing them how to do a J-stroke with a canoe paddle. And I mean, that's just for a recreation guide. I can't speak to some of the others, but for Sea Kayak Guide, there's navigation and knowing what all the different buoys are. And like I said, you can go in and kind of learn exactly what will be on that test. And there are lots of guide training classes. So when I was first getting into this world, I hadn't been in a sea kayak long, and I had been hired and told, okay, we have these camps that are in Maine, and now we need a Maine guide on our staff. And I was in New Hampshire at the time. And so they told me, you got to go through this testing process. I'm like, what is this? And I wasn't a Maine resident. I didn't really know anything about this. I had like worked one season in Bethel, Maine, ski instructing. And so I said, okay, I'll learn about it. And I went through one of the LL Bean Sea Kayak Guide trainings.
Nice.
And that really gave me this like very wide, broad view and a deep dive into sea kayak guiding, and put into perspective all the things I didn't know and what I needed to focus on and study and practice before I took this exam. And so there is a lot to it. And so there's this respect I had after taking this training and realizing, okay, I have to prepare for this exam. And at the time, I had a lot of pressure on me because I needed this certification to be able to run 3 weeks of a camp that was running that summer. And I was the only staff member going through this training at the time. So I went through the process, and by the end of it, I mean, this was 2018. So I think I was 21. How many years ago was that? Or
A couple.
I was younger than I was like 20.
Yeah.
I was a baby, and I remember going through this process and being so terrified. I was just like, I need this, you know, and it was very intimidating. Like, you're sitting there with two really like knowledgeable master Maine guides who do this for a career, and they're asking you questions one after the other, and they're asking you about a catastrophic event, and they're giving you a scenario, and you have to talk through how you're going to handle it. And I had never been through something like that in real life. And by the end of it, and they shook my hand and they said, congratulations, you're the newest Maine Sea Kayak Guide, certified Maine Sea Kayak Guide. And I just started crying. I started crying because I was so honored, and I really knew what it took to be in that position for them to say yes. And now you need to study up on some of these things that you clearly like need more practice with. But it was, you know, these older men were like, don't make us cry. Like, they knew that like I really, really valued this process. And so I've had a lot of respect for it since. And I really do encourage a lot of people who are interested to go through the process. even if you're not looking to guide, like
Mhm.
it is, I mean, it would be great. We need more guides in this industry, right?
Totally.
For bringing tourism to Maine and to guide people safely out
Mhm.
in the wilderness, whether it be paddling, backpacking,
Yeah.
skiing,
Mhm.
sea kayaking. We need more Maine guides. We need more Maine guides that are my age, actually. That's a whole other podcast
Mhm.
episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the cool, like you brought up that there's a couple of other states that also have this type of process and everything, and it was interesting because the conversation came up when I was down in North Carolina at the Outdoor Economy Conference, and one of the sort of breakout sessions was like all of these different guides that kind of focus in different areas,
Mm-hmm.
but they all do business within North Carolina, like Western North Carolina, um, and that topic kind of came up of how like they are not one of the states that currently requires that type of certification process.
Mm.
So the like a part of the sort of focus of the session was really revolving around like the branding of the guide profession down
Mm-hmm.
there. And you know, I think we're very fortunate to come from a state where there is a such high level of priority
Mm-hmm.
that like if you're going out and you know you're providing this type of experience to people, who are both residents and folks who are coming in from out of state and out of country, that there's an expectation that like you are a strong facilitator of whatever that given experience is,
Absolutely.
and I totally hear you on the controversy piece, and like we deal with it all the time. Like I am not a main guide, but I deal a lot in the ski world, like with Professional Ski Instructors of America and the American Association of Snowboard Instructors, and and we are talking a lot about these same types of things of like, we have this certification ladder,
Yeah.
um, and not only what is the value to the person going through that process, but also like what is then the branding expectation of like if you're going out with a certified pro, like what does that mean to the guest, to the
Yeah.
customer, you know what I mean? And so I think it really does help connect a lot of the pieces in our state, and I wouldn't be surprised if more states slowly find ways to adopt those types of things, even if it's not necessarily a requirement in the beginning, but it's just like, hey, we're going to start offering these actual trainings.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I'm sure you see it all the time. Like there are there are so many different people that you're bringing in and out of all these different outdoor settings, um, and they all want something maybe just a little different. And so now you have to take this like, okay, I have this baseline of things that I kind of had an idea that I was going to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
but then all of a sudden I hear somebody in my group who's like, oh well, I really hope that like we get to see like a seal on a rock today, or whatever. Like, and you're like, okay, might have to pivot my plan a little bit if I'm thinking about that, because at the end of the day, like we're trying to make sure that we can safely offer the guests what they are looking for. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's their perceived experience of this before you actually get them out into the water. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
like
yeah.
it's sorry to
No, no,
interrupt
no,
you.
no, no. I was about to pass it.
I was just gonna say I think it's a lot of customer service and it's a lot of like reading your group and knowing that like there are so many different types of people that become a main guide, and so you really can bring like a different skill set to it. Like some people are really into just sea kayaking and like they are gonna be the best sea kayaker, but they might not be the best guide because you're guiding 10 to 12 people. And those are people and they have needs, and that might be the first time their butt is ever getting in a sea kayak, and it might be the last. And I think what we're trying to do is, instead of it being the last, we're creating this passion, and whether maybe not, it's not for sea kayaking, but it's for connecting to nature and being in the outdoors. And so there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and so there's a lot that kind of rides on a guide's shoulders. um, so it's a really interesting career path, and what I've noticed being a guide is that there are not a lot of people my age, and if there are, they can't sustain it as a career because it's 2 to 3 hours at a time, and it's really relying on tips, and if the tips aren't great, then it's really hard to make a living off of that. So I see a lot of older generations who are retired, or maybe this is their weekend job.
Yeah.
And so I think what I'm seeing a lot now in the industry is that we're trying to make this more of a sustainable career. And so if you can have these skill sets, that it will just leverage some of, like, if you can do these things, you can continue to be a leader in the industry, and you're starting from the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be able to be in the position that I'm in now if it weren't for me lugging really heavy tandem kayaks or cleaning out sand from the bottom
Yeah.
of a boat. Like, there's a really broad range, and I think it kind of takes that, you have to start somewhere, and you can continue to gain your experience. And if it's something you're really passionate about, you can make it a career, but you can also complement it with other things and build it out. So
Yeah, it's like that age-old question of like, how do you build enough revenue streams in there for it to like make sense, especially when you're talking about jumping into like the full-time side of that
yeah,
equation. You know what I mean? And I think that's where, like, when you start to look at the folks who have gone down multiple tracks or have gone like down the full-blown like master main guide process and everything, like some of that is just that component of like they want to be able to be ready to offer a service almost regardless of what the prospective customer is kind of looking at, right? Like I've found ways to develop my skills so that way whatever you want to do, I'm going to help you experience that right here in Maine.
Yep.
You know. So cool.
Yeah, the main guide world, it's pretty neat. And there's also the educational trip leader permit training, which is, I would almost say it's like a complement to the main guide. They're not the same thing, but it's the same idea of creating a baseline of knowledge and experience so that people can take other people out in nature safely. And so the ETLP is what it stands for, or the acronym. And so I've been an ETLP administrator, so I'm the one signing off on the permits. And really, it was designed for educators in the state of Maine. So when I was working at Teens to Trails and we were running outdoor programs, outdoor clubs in middle and high schools, these teachers didn't need to have any kind of certification to take their students outside. And so in 2021, this educational trip leader permit was founded really just to kind of set a precedent of like, this is the baseline knowledge if you're going to be taking students into a backcountry setting and away from potable water or on water. So paddling flat water, or, I mean, I would steer clear from sea kayaking.
Yeah.
I still think that a lot of teachers will hire a guide for certain things. And this is really for what they're currently doing in their school setting, which is, going on camping trips, going hiking, maybe backpacking into like Maine Hudson Trails hut, things like that.
Yeah.
And there's been controversy around this too, because a lot of teachers have been doing this for 30 years, and they've been guiding students for 30 years, and they've seen this evolution of how this industry has continued on, and how the students have been changing too. And I think a lot of them are like, I've been doing this for so long and I didn't need to go through this expensive, time-consuming process. And I totally understand and hear that side of it. And I also think that there has to be a set of standards. And if we can look at it like it's an opportunity to get together with a bunch of other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing and network with them, see what new things maybe you can bring back to your school, and learn the things that you don't know. Like, it's this mile wide, inch deep view of outdoor leadership. And I always see teachers coming into it and they're like, I know it all. I've been doing this for a really long time. And then they leave and they're like, wow, I really haven't worked with a compass and a map in a long time, and that was really beneficial. Or I didn't know as many knots as I thought I did. Or, wow, that's how a T-Rescue works? I didn't realize that was how it works. And so stepping back from that, the educational trip leader permit is a 1-day training. It's pretty inexpensive. It's offered randomly throughout the year. And quite a few teachers are now certified. So there's a little less interest and it's beyond just teachers too. Like Teens to Trails and UMF hosted one, and we had students there. So students, like for me at Colby, students who are leading group trips with other students in this, like I said, backcountry setting, away from potable water or on water, they are required to have this ETLP. And to get the permit, you need a wilderness first aid. So that's even more of a a wilderness medical requirement than becoming a Maine guide. Like Maine guide, you just need CPR and first aid.
Yep.
And so it's pretty awesome to get this permit and to go through this training, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's funny because I get it. Like all of this is so like your own perspective based and all that stuff. But like you brought up, and I'm sure you heard this a lot throughout the whole ETLP process of like, oh, it's like it's expensive and like the days that it's required, like the required trainings and blah blah blah. Maybe it's just because I have gone through so many different certifications in my life, but like the ETLP especially, I feel like is one of the lowest barrier versions of all of the different ones, right? Like,
absolutely, but I think I'm seeing it from a teacher's perspective where
I get it.
They don't have the support from their schools. They don't have the funding. I mean, I date a middle school teacher and he, he tells me all the time, he's like, this is a really hard thing for me to get to be able to do the things I was doing before the certification went through. And I probably shouldn't say that out loud. He would be like, what are you doing? But I see that struggle, and I know that it is a barrier, but I understand your point.
And so I think, we've talked about the Maine guide. We've talked about the ETLP, and I think this just goes to show, right? Like, I mean, I think we're already like 30 minutes in, and we've just sort of talked about these two, right? And so, I think this is definitely something where it's probably at least a 2-part, if not a 3-part series of kind of diving into some more of the certification side. Like I know obviously most of my experience comes from the ski world, and I want to really dive into that piece too, because I think outside of it being about skiing, like there's a lot of the very core like skill development stuff that is hyper transferable regardless of what profession you go into. So definitely keep an eye out for more of this conversation, because I think it's something that Sam and I are both really passionate about.
Yeah, I love talking about certifications, and I feel like I want to open this up to anybody who has questions about outdoor recreation certifications or the Maine guide process or the ETLP process or honestly like wilderness medicine. Like reach out to me because I love talking about it and I've been through a lot of it, and so happy to keep talking. And there are so many other certifications that we wanted to talk about too, that really benefit and boost your resume, but also your experience and the type of experience you can offer to, whether it's your students or within your job or you're guiding people. Like there's so many things that kind of boost your skill set. So definitely keep an eye out for episode 2, but we can jump into voices from the Adirondack chairs.
Yeah.
Amazing. What's one certification or skill that you've always wanted to earn but you haven't yet?
I think the Maine guide like cert process. Like I had toyed around with it like right after I had graduated from college and I'd come back to Maine, but just myriad of reasons like never ended up going through with it. And I think it is something because I connect so much with what I do in the ski world. I just happen to do it on a ski mountain at a resort as compared to like truly going out into the wilderness. So I would say that the Maine guide license is definitely something that's on my radar.
You should do it. I have a lot of study guides for you.
Oh, great.
That would be helpful.
If you were going to teach a course in like outdoor skills, what is the topic of that course?
Oh man. There's so many different avenues I could go with this, and I feel like I do a lot of this for my job, and with my friends, honestly. I really like the planning and preparing aspect of outdoor adventures. I think that is like the area where risk management is most prevalent, and you can actually reduce a lot of risk, and it's also the fun part for me, so I think that would come through. I really enjoy planning a trip and going through all the details to make it happen, and so I could easily teach a class, and
Nice.
and I think a lot of people really struggle with the planning aspect of an adventure, and it's a big barrier and it's overwhelming. So
Totally.
that would be my first thought. Which certification taught you the most about yourself, not just the outdoors?
Um, I would probably say going through the level 3 certification process for PSIA, because it really opened my eyes to, we think a lot in that certification world about like your physical ability to ski and perform all of those different skills on snow. But like now being on the assessor side, like there's so much more to it. And like, we have the technical fundamental side, but then there's also the teaching fundamentals. We also have people skill fundamentals, like where we're actually identifying, here are things that you can improve on as a human being to be a better facilitator for the experience that you have these folks out there with. Um, and it was put so well to me when I was successful at the process, and I came back to Sugarloaf, and one of my colleagues looked at me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you just got your driver's license. Get ready to learn." And so, this is something where, the level 3 cert allows me to teach anywhere in the country. And then if I'm fluent in a couple of languages, I can like also get internationally certified. And so everybody would think like that's the pinnacle, right? But then you realize like I'm just getting started. Like there's just so much information that's available. And then like us having to make those decisions on snow with whatever you have in front of you kind of thing. So I would say for me, that was the most eye-opening, just like you always have so much to learn. And the second you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're not,
Especially with these certifications.
Yeah.
So there's always learning to do.
Yeah. What would you say is one certification that even if someone's not going to like be working in the outdoors professionally, what's the one certification you do tell them like go and get it?
I mean, we've talked about this a lot on this episode, and I think having a wilderness first aid and like even CPR and first aid, just baseline, it just helps you be a better human in a community to be able to like offer that support to somebody in need, and you never know when you're going to need that skill set. And so if you can start learning, it's so beneficial, especially if you're spending a ton of time outside and you don't have a wilderness first aid. Like, what happens when something goes wrong and you're alone? What are you going to have on your pack or on your person, or how are you going to manage that situation? And like really thinking about that. So yeah, definitely wilderness first aid would be my answer.
Cool. So that's another episode. Like we said, we will definitely make sure that this is like a 2 or 3 part series. And just thank you so much to everybody that's been supporting us so far. And make sure if you haven't already, like follow, subscribe, give us a rating on all the podcast streaming platforms.
Yeah, all of that really helps us, and we're just trying to grow this thing and get the word out so that all of this work that Austin and I are putting into it feels worth it. And the more people that listen to it and the more people that feel an impact from it, it makes us feel good. So
Totally. Yeah. So with all of that, we'll see you outside.
See you outside.